So, almost 2 weeks ago, I said in my final unboxing for the year 2021 that I was going to do a follow-up video in regards to the DX Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon from the 2021 Super Sentai series Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger. Wow, I'm actually starting to forget the name of it. I can't believe it. That's fast. So anyways, the reason I said I was going to do a follow-up video, and I didn't think of it at the time that I was doing the initial unboxing for this, is because, well, I can't read Japanese. The instructions are so much gobbledygook to me. I couldn't understand what was going on. And so I was just kind of blindly going through the electronics, and that really wasn't fair. And I only realized it in editing. This really isn't going to play out long because it's just going to, come on, get to the transformation, get to the commentary, blah, blah. You were waiting for that. And I realized that mid edit. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of all the electronics nonsense. And and I'll do it in a later video, to get that done as quickly as possible. Turns out the video still ran in for an hour and 20 minutes. Who knew? Anyways, this is the follow-up video for the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon, where I actually know what I'm doing with the electronics at this point. Now, of course, this is the year 2022, and Avataro Sentai Dan Brothers is not even 2 months away, or is just over 2 months away. So, like, the reason it took me so long to make this is because, like, well, what do I really need to make this video? I mean, does anybody care about this anymore? And the answer is not really, because everybody's moving on to the new content. So that's why I put this off for so long. Like, does anybody really care at this point? Not really. But I said I was going to do it, so here I am, and here we go. God, this thing is such a brick. Oh, look at this thing. It's not even a vehicle. It's a block. My God. Okay, so hopefully I don't touch anything unnecessarily here and trigger the electronics earlier than I need to. So there's a crucial piece of information that I was missing when I did the unboxing for the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon, and that's primarily because I can't read Japanese. The other reason is because I had not looked up any reviews of this. I think I'd seen a couple of pictures, but I'd never seen any reviews. So, in short, I had no idea what I was doing when I did the unboxing, even though the instructions were right in front of me. The instructions are all in Japanese, and I can't read them. But the long and the short of it is we've actually encountered this kind of DX mode shifting, electronic mode shifting before. And believe it or not, I actually have a couple of examples available. The first one was in 2017, which was from Uchu Sentai Kyuranger with the first wave robo, the DX Kurino. Ironically enough, I removed the batteries on this one years ago, so you're just going to have to take my word on this one. Let's see, where's the button? Button's right up there. So basically, this was the first example of mode shifting. And what would happen is there was only one button, one interactive. There's no hidden buttons on the interior of any of the other Voyagers. Did I say Voyager? Yeah, I did. Voyagers. There's no hidden button. There's no nothing. It's just this little button sitting right here on the collar. It's kind of gray. It's in shadow, but you got to trust me. It's there. There it is. You can see the button right there. Okay. But yes, I've removed the batteries. And basically, you press the button quickly and it'll make a sound. You press and hold it down and then it'll shift modes. And then when it shifts mode, if you press the button quickly, then it has a completely different set of reactions. Now, of course, they're all in a specific order, and they always play in that exact same order, but suffice it to say, the only way you could switch modes was to press and hold down the button, and then it would switch. It could range anywhere from just treating it by the Shishi Voyager all by itself, or you press and hold it down and it's the Kurino in its entirety, or you press and hold it down a third time and you get some sort of I don't know, some sort of electronic game of some kind where you have to do the timing. It'll blank, 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 and you have to like anticipate which light it is. I never learned what the game is, but suffice it to say, it was something that was exclusive to the toy and was not featured in the series itself. So this is actually more relevant to the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon because there's only one button, and that single button determines which mode, which electronic mode this thing is placed into. So that's the first example. And then the second example of this electronic-only mode switching came just 1 year later in form of the Good Kaiser. I really want to say Good Cool Kaiser VSX, but I know that's totally wrong. Please forgive me. So the Good Striker. I said Good Kaiser, didn't I? Yeah, I meant to say Good Striker. That's what I meant to say. Good Striker also has multi-mode electronic switching in him. Now, regardless of how successful or unsuccessful you think this is, that's not what I'm trying to bring up here. The point is, you mode switch it, and then depending on which button you press, that determines which mode it goes into, and then it stays there at least until its 30-second timer runs out. So the first time you squeeze the button, he makes a little noise and announces himself. And then the second time you squeeze the trigger or turn the dial, you get the mode selection. Now, depending on which button you press or which switch you toggle, that will determine which mode it goes into. You've got two choices because that's how Lupin Ranger versus Pat Ranger works. The first one is the trigger back here. The second one is the dial located on his backside. So I'm going to deliberately pull the trigger now. Here's the mode selection part. Pulling the trigger. So it's obviously selected a specific mode. It's in Pat Kaiser mode. And if I squeeze and hold down the trigger, it'll say the Pat Kaiser thing. But if I squeeze it one more time real quick, it gives the catchphrase that the Pat Rangers say on screen. Now, and there's only those three phrases when you just do a quick squeeze. So the first one is that Good Striker announces himself. The second one is the mode selection, and then the third one is the key phrase. The bonus, when you squeeze or when you hold down the trigger, is you get the special combination sound effect. So now I'm going to mode switch again, and every single time that I squeeze the trigger, it'll immediately go into Pat Kaiser or the Pat Ranger mode. But we still have the dial switch down here, so I'm going to be using this one instead. And then in this case, for convenience, I can squeeze the trigger and it's still in Lupin Ranger mode, or Lupin Kaiser mode. Squeeze and hold it down and you get this. So effectively, you're getting 4 sound effects out of each one. You get his introduction, you get mode selection, you get the key phrase that's used by that particular team, because this is Lupin Ranger versus Bat Ranger, and then you get the special bonus phrase when you squeeze and hold down the trigger. And that's the limitations of what Good Kaiser here can do. So the only difference between this... Actually, there isn't really a lot of difference now that I think about it, because they both have a trigger and they both have something you have to rotate on them. And that's why that's why Good Striker actually has more in common with the, what's this called? The Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon than it does with the Q-Reno. So, it turns out that with all of that said, the DX Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon actually has a lot of sound effects built into it. And these sound effects can actually be broken down into 3 different modes, which will be shown over here. The first mode is Cannon mode. And it's pretty doggone simple when you get it out of the box and you remove the little electronic tab battery blocker thingy. I don't know what these are called. Shut up. When you pull that out, it defaults to Cannon mode. And I should also remind you that unlike the previous 2 toys that I was just showing you, this one has no on or off switch. It's constantly on. Okay, so just remember that when you're pulling a button or you're handling the jet mode or whatever it is, be aware this thing is armed and ready for battle at any given moment. Which also means it's really, really, really easy to screw up at the same time. So, okay, here we go. So it's defaulted to Cannon mode right now. When I squeeze the trigger, it'll make cannon sounds. Where's the thing? It's right there. And you can also rapid fire that as much as you want to. Now, all that I'm doing right now is I'm just doing quick squeezes, and that's quick squeezes, and that's it. So that's pretty much all you're going to get out of Cannon Mode. Let's see, how do I do this? I'll just do it right now. Okay, now we've got the particular gimmick of the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon, or just whatever. Yeah, Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon is this dial or this gear that sits on the top. I don't know exactly what this is called, but it's just like it's a this is where the references to Super Sentai come into play. Each of these symbols on here represents not just one specific Super Sentai series, but rather like 3 or 4 respective ones. So, for example, there's a dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus looking head that represents dinosaur power. There's a fist that represents fighting power. And I'll actually show you the list over here of what the different symbols mean. There's no way, I'm going to say it right now, there's no way ahead of time that you can specifically select the one that you want. They will always, always, always start and play in the order that you see listed over there, okay? So you're just required to go with that. I'm not entirely certain how long it waits between when you select a specific fighting power or a specific Sentai power, and if you just let it sit for like a half minute or whatever it is, does that like default back to that? I'm not entirely certain. Does it keep track of it? I doubt that it's sophisticated enough to keep track for like days or weeks or months afterwards which one you had it on the last time. The point is, no matter how much you turn this thing, you cannot select which specific one you'd like to have pop up next. It will always default to that list over there. So you just got to get used to it. Now, in that particular, that was Miracle Power. I should have paid attention. Yeah, I think that was Miracle Power, which would be like. Actually, I don't know what the list is. Let me pull up the list before I start opening my mouth. Let's see. Miracle Power. Miracle Power, which is Goggle 5. Huh? Really? O Ranger? Huh? Magi Ranger? Yes. Go Sager? Yes. And Tokiger? Huh? Boy, they really sorted that weird. Well, they must have gotten stuck in a corner. That's Mysterious Miracle Power. I don't know. Let's try another one, shall we? So that particular sound effect would represent Turbo Ranger, yeah. Car Ranger, yeah. Bokinger, yeah. Go-Onger, yeah. Kira Major, huh? Honestly, I would have swapped like Kira Major and Tokuger. Like I would have swapped those, but whatever. I'm also just now realizing that yeah, it is going down the list, but I was totally expecting it to go to the Justice Power, but for whatever reason it didn't. So whatever. Let's do another one. Wow, editing that sequence was really annoying. But suffice it to say, yeah, there's what, 11 of these? Yeah, there's 10 of these. Now, there's one other kind of bonus one. The other reason why I was holding it this way is you notice that for each of these special powers, the lights, the LEDs that are on the inside here actually changed depending on which one was going. So, for example, with Mysterious Miracle Power, I think it's going to turn pink. I could be wrong. Yeah, so you see right there, it turns pink because, blah, 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 blah. Now, because I haven't watched the show, I'm assuming that that particular power is utilized by one of the Zenkaigers. So that's how that works. But turns out there's another one here because if I understand the lore correctly, or if I understand what's happening in the series correctly, again, having not seen it with my own eyes, you can actually the reason why those special powers show up is not just because they're summoning the power, but they're actually summoning previous rangers. That's kind of the thing. So the reason why it's color coded like that is like when you get mysterious miracle power, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 5 rangers who all represent that particular power. So I think like was there a goggle pink? I don't remember. There was an O pink, there was a Magi pink, there was a Gosei pink, and there was a Tokyo. Which was it? 5 Go. I can't remember. Or Go Go. I think it was Tokyo Go Go, whatever it is. And all of them were pink rangers. Did Goggle 5 have a pink ranger? I honestly don't remember at this point. Whatever. So, but there's also, so I've just gone over all 10 of the kind of standard Super Sentai powers, but there's also a special bonus one. If you turn it not once, not twice, but 3 times, and then you'll actually hear a distinct electronic clicking or, audio clicking sound, it will let you know that you've activated the Burning Super Sentai power. So I will now be demonstrating that here. So that's obviously the big finisher attack or whatever. It's like all of the previous 10 special powers or whatever it is, those are just summoning assistants to help with the fight. But when you do that super, you turn the thing around 3 or 4 times, that's the big finishing attack for the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon specifically. That's their Super Sentai finisher. Whatever it's called, I don't know. I don't care. You'll also notice that when I did that final, special attack or whatever it is, you notice that all of the colors flashed and we got a new sound effect altogether. Now here's the catch. So long as I don't do a continuous rotating of this oversized Sentai gear right here on the top, I can actually summon up to 3 teams and then squeeze the trigger and it'll send it off on its way. So long as I don't do that continuous turning, it'll work. So you actually can recreate the way that it works in the show. So I'm going to summon each of the special powers individually, and then I will squeeze the trigger. The moral of the story being, so long as you don't constantly rotate it, you can select as many teams as you want to, and it won't really know the difference. Okay, so we've just gone over the entirety of the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon mode. Now we're going to be going over the Zenryoku Eagle mode, which is the jet mode. So this is the second mode out of the 3 modes that this toy is capable of doing. When you go into Zenryoku Eagle mode, I'll just say fighter mode, or Eagle mode is what I'll say, okay? When you go into Eagle mode, the dial on the bottom is not going to work at all. It doesn't matter how much you turn it, it doesn't matter, it's not going to work, it's not going to matter, okay? Because it automatically cuts off the function of the gear. Now, the other thing about the Zenryoku Eagle mode is that it's one of those things where, like, you have to stay with it or else it'll power itself off. Now, as I said earlier, it defaults to Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon mode, but when you select the Eagle mode, it actually sits there for about 15 or 20 seconds and then it'll turn itself off. And then, at that point, it'll default to off. Now, here's what's going to happen. When I go into Eagle mode, the only way you can get to Eagle mode is you have to hold down the trigger and then it'll make its announcement. Then, Once it's finished in its announcement, it'll go into standby mode, or rather, it'll make kind of a jet fighter aircraft engine sound effect that just cycles over and over and over for about 15 to 20 seconds. At that point, while it's cycling, because you're if you want to do an attack feature, then you quickly squeeze the trigger, and that will trigger the weapon sound. So here we go. I'm going to hold down the button, or I'm going to hold down the trigger, and that will select Zenryoku Eagle mode. It's waiting for me right now. And you see it looks like kind of an engine exhaust. That's why it's constantly pulsing this. Unless I squeeze the trigger. And you can squeeze this as many times as you want. So long as you do not hold it down, it will stay in Zenryoku Eagle mode. Now I'm going to let this thing deliberately run its course and assume that it's shutting itself off. Oh, that reminds me. As I mentioned earlier, it automatically shuts this off, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to let this thing power itself off on its own now. Now at that point, it just assumes, okay, you've set the toy down and you're done with it. Okay, so as long as you don't squeeze the trigger, it will stay in fighter mode. Now, here's the interesting thing. As I mentioned earlier, if the toy automatically turns itself off like it has just now, it will default to cannon mode. Observe. And that's all there is to the Zenryoku Eagle mode. Since you can't really do anything with the Sentai gear down here, you just press and hold down to select the Eagle mode, and then you just let it go for about 15 or 20 seconds. If you want to keep it going for any longer, you quickly squeeze the trigger, and then it'll just keep it in that mode until you decide to set it down. And then it will turn itself off. And now we move into the third and final mode, that is Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot. Actually, it's the Zenryoku Zenkai-Oh, but, you know, the early one is actually easier to say. Just call him the Big Guy, you know? Let's get it on. Let's get it on. Alright, we'll do that. Now, because this guy is so freaking heavy, I'm just going to let him stand on my desk and we'll call it good. But, you know, rest assured, I'm just going to be squeezing the trigger back here. So it took me a couple of minutes to reassemble this thing, and it's already defaulted back to cannon mode. As such. And again, it doesn't really matter. The toy is not smart enough to know when you've changed modes or when you've attached something. So it's exactly the same as far as the Good Striker, but then it also has the multi-mode in it like Kurino does. So, you know, it doesn't matter if these things are open or not. It doesn't matter if you attach these things or not, which is actually kind of disappointing. I wish that it had. You know, I wish they would at least acknowledge that you've attached Vroom and Majin. You know, that would have been nice if it recognized it, but whatever. Okay, so what we need to do right now is we're going to jump between modes 1, 2, and 3. So the first thing we're going to do is we're starting out in cannon mode, and then we're going to be switching to Eagle mode, and then we're going to jump ahead to Zenryoku Zenkai-Oh. Or just, yeah, Zenryoku Zenkai, just big mode, or combined mode, I'll call it. So it's going to be a little confusing at first just because, but just know that I'm going to be jumping between the modes, and I'll point it out over there what it's doing at this point. Unlike the Zenryoku Eagle, once I get it into Zenryoku Zenkai-Oh mode, or combined mode, it will stay there. Again, for about 30 seconds, and then it will default back to cannon mode. So I'm going to be hopping through the modes real quickly just to get us to combined mode, but once I get there, it will stay there on its own. Here we go. That's the Zenryoku Eagle mode, and I'm going to press and hold down again. Right now it's waiting for me to do the combined form, and that's why it's flashing like this. And so now it is in Zenryoku Zenkai-Oh mode. Every time I squeeze the trigger or quickly squeeze the trigger, it will make kind of a metal thumping sound. You'll also notice that it cycles through the colors. So, which the colors just are just what the individual Kikinoids and Zenkaiser himself is. That's what those colors represent. Kind of disappointing they don't have purple or green in there. Just saying. Now, of course, if I press and hold down the button, it'll switch back to cannon mode. So for the moment, it's safe. Now, unlike what you had to do with the cannon mode, where you just kind of squeeze the trigger and that's it, and then unlike what you had to do with the Zenryoku Eagle mode, where again you hold down the trigger, what it was waiting for... Why did my screen go black? That's weird. What you have to do instead in order to activate the combined form is you have to turn this thing, which means that the Sentai gear in the front has been reactivated, which means you can still access it at this point. Now, unlike what happens in the Zenryoku Cannon mode, or what happens in the Cannon mode, when it's in combined mode, it will automatically jump. It'll tell you the name of the power, and then it'll just automatically do a special attack. Because basically, you're imbuing the Super Sentai team that you've selected or a particular power into the combined form, and so that's why, effectively, you're giving off a special attack of some kind right there. And it doesn't really matter which way you turn it. It will still continue to follow the rotation of the specific powers, whatever it is. It'll still follow that. It's just that they'll activate automatically. And so on and so forth. Now, if you want to do kind of the ultimate final Super Sentai, oh my god, what is happening, that you use for your big finishing attack, you're going to want to do the rotating thing like I showed you earlier with the cannon mode. You're going to rotate 1, 2, 3 times, and then it will go off. So here's the big finisher sound effect. It's a little underwhelming, but like, whatever. You want me to do it again? Alright, I'll do it again. Now, the interesting thing about that is when I'm rotating the thing, again, you can rotate it one time, and it won't have any problem with that. It'll do its particular special attack, whatever it is. See, it'll just do its particular thing, and then it'll go off. But the interesting thing about it is, like, I just turned it only once just then. But if you turn it 3 times, then it starts flashing. Notice the difference. You see, it stayed black. It stayed darkened until I turned enough times, and then it signified, oh yeah, now it's ready to go off. Let me double check something. I want to see if I could just keep turning it and see what happens. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It'll just automatically do the special attack, whatever it is. And then even after I've done that final big ultimate combined explosion-y, If I press the button real quickly, it'll still make that mechanical thunk sound or whatever it is. So there you go. And that is it for the combined form. Now, if I leave this alone for about a half a minute or so, once again, it will default back to Cannon mode, or I can forcibly change it back just by holding down the trigger one final time. And now it's gone back to Cannon mode, or it assumes it's gone back to Cannon mode. So even though all the things are attached here, again, it's not a smart toy. So it just assumes, because you held down the button, it's gone back to Cannon mode. And if you want to, you can even put it back into Eagle mode. Because again, it doesn't know that it has stuff attached to it. And of course, there's nothing to say you can't use it in this manner. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, if you want to do it that way, it's entirely up to you. But it does get a bit confusing after a while. Wait, is there a speaker on the top? And I've totally been going to the wrong place. Like I've been putting my microphone down here at the waist because that's where the speaker is. But like now all of a sudden I'm wondering if it's like sitting on the top and I've been screwing it up this entire time. Or maybe it's just the sound is coming out the front and I didn't realize it. Whatever. So that is it for the sound effects for the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon. DX Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon. That is how you use this monstrosity. I was kind of tired and worn out when I did the unboxing for the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon, and when I did my conclusion at the end, watching the footage back after the fact during editing, I realized I didn't really make a whole lot of a comment on the series itself. Well, not the series itself, but like for being the 45th anniversary of Super Sentai series, is this the best way they could have gone about representing it? I think I kind of made it clear earlier on that it would be really really difficult to top the 35th anniversary, which was Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. It would be really really difficult to top that. But the question is, does this match up to it? Both yes and no. I mean, was I expecting this? No, I was not. Don't get me wrong. What's here is, I mean, it certainly is a big, pretty thing to look at. It's really wide, though. I'll say that, and the stance is questionable at best. But in terms of like, is Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger appropriate an appropriate representation of 45 seasons of Super Sentai, not 45 years, because there was a year and a half gap in there because of Spider-Man, remember, which is not counted as part of Super Sentai, but it was a very very important step in getting Super Sentai to become what it ultimately was. But anyways, is this an appropriate send off for 45 consecutive super, I shouldn't say consecutive, for 45 Super Sentai series? Was this an appropriate send-off? I'm inclined to say no, but I'm nowhere near as upset about this being a representative of Super Sentai and also the was it Zenkaiiii and the Tukai-Oh, obviously the Tukai-Oh, which I still don't, as of recording, still don't have. It's not the way that I would have done it, but what's here, this is getting heavy, but what's here is not bad. It's not bad at all. There's a couple of questionable decisions that were made, and this is like Oh, by the way, you can take these off. If you want these wings to stick out not quite as much, you can actually swap these between the shoulders, whatever. But then there's the whole sword thing, which actually have sitting over there. So like I'm not going to pull it out, stick it over here. Like there's a couple of things that could have done differently, but what's here? I kind of went over like we've got Magi Ranger, Magic King, we've got Jew Ranger, we've got Gal Ranger, we've got Bokinger. Bokinger was actually pretty significant. Bokinger is tame for the 25th anniversary. Bokinger's, or 25th? I'm sorry, 30th anniversary. Bokinger's kind of a tame entry, but considering what Gokaiger would end up doing just 5 years later, and then Juoger did 5 years after that. I mean, Juoger is just lowest of low for an anniversary, considering how it had been built up. I mean, they'd been doing specials of the 5 year anniversaries ever since, I think it was, I want to say Kaku Ranger, which was the then 15th anniversary of Super Sentai. Well, technically it was Dai Ranger because they weren't counting Go Ranger and Jakku at the time. But as far as making a big special affair of representing previous Sentai series, which Gao Ranger did not do, Bokinger kind of did with the closing credits. They did that, or they did a mention or a special nod to each of the series. But anyways, did Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger succeed at that? From a toy perspective, I'm inclined to say yes. I would not have expected O Ranger, and I wouldn't have expected Magi Ranger to be represented. Also, Jew Ranger, not Jew but Jew Ranger, to have that being a representative. Yeah, I kind of understand it because, Power Rangers is a very important thing. So that kind of needed to be represented. But Magi Ranger, that's really surprising. There must be a lot more fans of Magi Ranger than I've been led to believe over the years. Gee, if only they made another show that was like a sequel or something like that. This is getting heavy. I don't care what it looks like. So, um, the toys themselves, I mean, the Zenkaios themselves are not bad. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're not bad. I actually do recommend Zenkai-Oh. Zenkaijuo has some God, it almost has some quality control problems, especially with the cannons and the way that things snap into place. Well, no, I'm sorry, it has engineering problems, not quality control. It has engineering problems. They're like, come on, this is Bandai of Japan. They've been doing this for how many? They've been doing this for over half a century. At this point, no excuse at this point, right? Not that Super Sentai's been around for half a century, but Bandai has been doing toys for over half a century at this point. So no excuse for the Zenkaiju-O. The Tukai-O is lazy. It's just I just can't get behind it. And the fact that Zenkaiju-O isn't even involved, or no, I'm sorry, Tukai-O. I'm sorry, I said the wrong. The fact that Tukai-O isn't even involved. Yes, I would want Zenkaiju-O involved in here. How it would do that, I don't know. Maybe it could have been some over-the-shoulder cannons. Could you imagine having the Jew Ranger Z's, the Z of the Jew Ranger on either side and have it being giant over-the-shoulder cannons? I'd fucking love for that to happen. And then have the Dragon Caesar's chest right here. Might as well. And then or kind of anything, and then have the Zenkaijuo's cannons as paired pistols or something like that. That would have been pretty neat. And then have Tukai-O could have been, I don't know, front leg armor, or it could have been heels to prevent the thing from falling over or something like that, or just why weren't Zenkaijo and Tukai-O, why were they not represented here? Honestly, I don't have an answer for you. Furthermore, and this actually occurred to me after I had finished doing the Zenryoku Zenkai-Oh, or Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon. Wow, that's hard to say. It suddenly occurred to me, it's called the Zenryoku Eagle, which Eagle is a representation of the secret organization from Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, which recruited the Go Ranger, which gave them all their technology and their powers and stuff like that. Naming this thing the Zenryoku Eagle, okay, fine, I can live with that, whatever. But the problem I've got is this is not representative of a Super Sentai specifically. All the other mecha are. You've got Zenkaiiii, you've got Tukai-Oh. Think what you will, think what I will of Tukai-Oh. It is representative of two other Super Sentai, and then you've got four Super Sentai represented right here. Why is this not physically representative of a Super Sentai? Now I can understand. Well, this represents all Sentai. Well, okay, but why would you call it the Zenryoku Eagle and then not do anything with that? Why didn't this represent the Very Balloon, which appeared in the Gokaiger movie, but it was all CG, and that isn't really what anybody wanted. Why couldn't this have been, kind of a helicopter thing, or make it, it's kind of the popular thing, they could have made it look like drones. So instead of having like helicopter blades underneath the paws or the claws or the talons or whatever it is, instead it would have been jet engines. And then each of those jet engines could form an attachment point. An attachment point here. You could form an attachment point here. You could have done that and still preserved the massive block that is the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon. You could have preserved that in some fashion or other, and you could also have preserved, the LEDs that are in here, and also the Sentai gear thingy right here. And yes, you can see that I've already plugged up the batteries. So, I mean, that's kind of a major thing that was missing from the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon. It's like, yeah, it's one thing to have the audio clips and have it named the Zenryoku Eagle, but it does. But by it in and of itself, it does not represent a specific Super Sentai in the way that the Zenkaiiii or the Tukai-Oh or the Zenkaiio, either one of the Zenkaiio represents. So that's something that's I'm really getting sick and tired of my screen going black like that. That's annoying. So it is a block, and it has a lot of good sound effects in it, and I kind of like the way that the different Sentais over here, like 4 or 5 teams, are piled into a single sound effect from this thing. Like, okay, I can respect that, whatever. But just the canon itself is kind of missing. It's missing some, not finality, but it's missing kind of that extra, I'll say, representation physically of a previous Sentai series or all of Sentai. Because, like, I mean, having Zenkaiser as the represent. Oh, God, yeah. Um, Having Zenkaiser as the representation of all Sentai, as his, like, his ranger suit form or whatever it is. Yeah, that's fine. Having him turn into Zenkaiiii. Wow, that was like, wow. No, nobody expected that one. But like, he shows up here. It's his face. It's his helmet. Whatever. And like, nobody cares. It's like, this right here does not represent Super Sentai. At least in my eyes, it doesn't. And that reminds me. I discovered this. Actually, I discovered this a couple of days ago. After, like a week after I posted the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon unboxing, I discovered something rather horrific. The cockpit right here, this thing right here, it's not just made out of plastic, it's made out of semi-transparent plastic. And the reason I know this is because when you flip open the cannon barrel, which side is it on? It doesn't really matter. When you flip open the cannon barrel and you look underneath, and the kind of the exposed innards of the toy or whatever it is, you can actually see through the blue plastic. So they actually went through the effort of making a semi-transparent plastic, and then they completely blocked it so that no light or no detail could be seen underneath it. Wouldn't have been a perfect opportunity to have Zenkaiser himself sitting somewhere in there, or maybe have like two Kaiser and Zenkaiser sitting next to each other, or they could have done anything like that. I mean, I don't know what kind of relationship they have in the show. Don't don't. But that being said, we could have had a semi-transparent cockpit, and that would have been all well, fine, and good. You could have put some cockpit detail in there, but for whatever reason they didn't. I don't know why, but they didn't. So, and as I said in the previous video, yeah, I have kind of attached to this thing, and yeah, okay, I can live with it. It remains to be seen, though. This is freaking thing. Can you guys see what I'm fiddling around with? Yeah, this frickin' thing right here. Cockpit bullshit. Just, ah! That's one of the big flaws of this thing, is like putting specialized sound effects. In answer to the question, should the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon have not had all the bitching that I did about Zenkaiio Juragaon, where I said, the electronics ruined it, and then I also said, not necessarily to the same degree, but there are also electronics in Vroom should the Zenryoku Zenkai Cannon not have had any sound effects in it? Should it have been a giant combiner, or a giant transforms into an actual vehicle, or it transforms into an actual? Because I pointed out, early in this video, so this is kind of a brick of a thing. Should it have transformed? I'm inclined to say no. For structural reasons, no. There's a lot of weight. I mean, there's a surprise. I mean, when you put, technically this is three, this is a gestalt, and traditionally, Super Sentai gestalts, or like the big super combiners or whatever it is, are traditionally pretty doggone heavy. Would they have been able to, if it had transformed, that would have compromised structural strength, not just of the plastic itself, but also of the joints. You would have been putting transformation joints, or even posability joints, under a tremendous amount of strain from all the stuff that's sitting up here. Ideally they wouldn't have had transforming hips, or I'm sorry, posable hips, or anything like that. So it was kind of a necessity that this thing is a brick. I mean, as much as I would like for the Zenryoku Eagle to be able to transform, I can understand why it's a bit of a brick, because it's heavy like a brick. This is a good 15 pounds. And well, I'd say about 10 or 12 pounds. This is about 10 or 12 pounds. I'm guessing that this is about 10 or 12 pounds. And really, if you're going to have a big transforming thing and then you're going to attach stuff to it, you start making a lot of compromises from a structural integrity perspective. So it's a brick, and it's annoying, but because it's a brick, they can afford to put a bunch of electronics into it. So the equation kind of balances itself out. Like, is this the best that they could have done as a representation of Super Sentai? As an overall franchise, not necessarily, no. But what is here is not bad. I mean, this is not a Zyuohger type scenario where they did fuck all for it, where none of the accessory vehicles, I mean, this isn't like, I mean, Zyuohger, it didn't even do a Tokyuger, where Tokyuger, they had, trains that had they had symbols on it, and the head was unique to a specific Sentai series. And Tokyuger wasn't even an anniversary series. But Zyuohger was, and they did absolutely nothing for Zyuohger. They did nothing for it. So, in terms of an anniversary series representing previous Sentai, I would say yes. This one is not as bad as what they did with Zyuohger, and that is to say, nothing at all. So what's here is not bad, okay? Yeah, there's some questionable and toy engineering choices that were made, and that will always be a problem for me. Oh yeah, and by the way, the ability to attach the sword. It's a sword, by the way, not a staff. I screwed that up in the unboxing. But yeah, I'm going to start repeating myself at this point. It's not how I pictured the 45th anniversary, but what we got is not horrible. It's not bad. It's not hate-worthy. It's really, really not worth it. There's some pretty sweet stuff that happened here. The representations. Oh boy, the power just flickered. All right, it's time for me to close this thing up. Oh, I hope this wasn't on mute the whole time. No, it wasn't. Okay, good. That means my rant is available. Okay, I think that will be sufficient for my coverage of the 45th Super Sentai series. What is it? Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger. How did I choke on that right at the last second? And so with that, this is AV Unit 4A saying thank you very much for tuning in.